Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. So we will be talking about incident response. So before we begin, who am I? I am Sai Krishna Singpuram. I am the senior cybersecurity consultant here at Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. You can see the logo there. So we are a joint initiative of Government of Telangana and Data Security Council of India. So I come with more than a decade of experience in cyber. My core forte lies in security operations, incident response, forensic investigations, and at the same time, I work on penetration testing, red teaming, IoT security, and privacy engineering. I am author of few books in cyber. So I have authored few books on IoT security and a few books in the privacy space and also SOPs for law enforcement. So I am a law enforcement trainer as well. So today's session would be mostly on incident response. We'll be talking about how enterprises look at security, what is required, where your jobs are actually, being transformed into with respect to how organizations work, what is the organization structure. So first I'll share my screen. Uh, Guys, I believe you are able to see my screen. Just give a thumbs up if you are able to see my screen, please. Perfect. So we are talking about incident response, but before we dig into the subject, so we have to understand what is cyber crisis. Where does incident response as a subject come into picture? So what is cyber crisis? An abnormal and unstable situation that threatens an organization's strategic objectives, reputation, or viability. So cyber crisis is such a crucial aspect of any organization. So it is an event that strikes at the heart of the organization. So what happens if there is some sort of a cyber crisis situations in an organization? If you're looking at this textbook definition that I have mentioned here, that threatens an organization's strategic objectives, reputation, or viability. So what are strategic objectives? So if at all you have come up with a new idea for building your own company, you are looking at certain needs of your customers. If you are not fulfilling their needs, there is no point for anyone to come and consume the content your organization is providing, right? So you have certain objectives to achieve and deliver for your audience. And with cyber crisis, what happens is threat actors will create a havoc inside your organization. So you might have already known that the primary motive of cybersecurity is to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So whenever a cyber attack happens or a hacking attempt happens on an organization, so the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that particular organization gets disturbed, right? So in cybersecurity, always remember there is no Fort Knox in cyber. There is nothing called as hack proof. You can be secure to max extent possible, but still, whenever you look at an organization's perspective, yes, they have $1 million budgets in place. They have all the security tools, the different technology that is coming up, and especially in recent times, you have an objective called AI that has been added into the organizations. But at the same time, they anticipate attack. Okay, so they always plan. If at all there is an attack that happens, what am I going to do next? Or what is that an organization can do if at all a cyber attack happens, right? So what type of attack can happen in an organization? What is the nature of crisis that we are talking about? Or what type of, like ambiguities that you can observe with respect to the technical infrastructure of an organization? So you might have already known, if at all you have attended the penetration testing course, we spoke about simulated threat attack on an organization. Whenever you're talking about simulated attack, what are you going to do? You are doing something called as probing, scanning, recon on the infrastructures, internet and network infrastructure. So what are the threat actors are also trying to do the same. What are they trying to do? They try to scan the infrastructure and try to identify the loophole that they can exploit. We spoke about something called as vulnerability. If you were a part of my previous lecture during vulnerability management. So vulnerability can arise from anywhere. It can arise from configuration. It can arise from software. It can arise from hardware or the firmware that we are talking about, or the complete infrastructure architecture that is in place, right? And large scale defacement of websites. So whenever you look at India, Pakistan situations, heightened national level security incidents that happen, immediately people from India attack Pakistan's infrastructure. Pakistani people target government infrastructure of India to do large scale defacement of websites. There is no data siphoning off, there is no exfiltration of data, but they only come and say that, okay, we were in your network for a while, and this is what I'm able to do. Okay. Our people during, especially during Pulwama attack, if you saw, I believe more than 150 websites of Pakistani government were compromised by some Indian threat actors. So then comes malicious code attacks. Any news that you see outside about a spyware, Trojan, malware, everything that comes under this category. So organizations are susceptible to malicious code attacks. So what is malware? So in a nutshell, in an LKG based definition, if you look at it, it is just a malicious software. So that is what is being leveraged. Malware affecting mobile devices. So identifying employees of an organization, individuals of an organization, understanding their mobile devices, and then running a targeted attack campaign. It can be a spyware also, just like Pegasus. Large scale spam attacks on the organization. It can be sometimes a part of DDoS or DOS attacks, denial of service. Identity theft attacks. So you might have seen in the recent times North Korea leveraging LinkedIn as a platform. They try to post themselves as possible recruiters, sometimes possible candidates for recruitment, and then performing some sort of an espionage attempt on the organization. Domain name server attacks. So DNS attacks, some sort of fat finger type of attacks, creating some sort of like identical or similar spoofed websites so that people can be tricked easily. Application level attacks. So any web application that you are seeing, maybe you had penetration testing, you had web application security, where we spoke about different aspects, the OWASP top 10. So you're trying to actively exploit a web application, right? Cyber espionage and advanced persistent threats. If there is some sort of intellectual property that governments feel are really important, there again this concept of cyber espionage and advanced persistent threats comes into picture. For example, take the example of COVID. So when pandemic hit, there were many companies, especially pharmaceutical companies, trying to come up with some sort of first-hand research for combating COVID. So there are companies which spend millions of dollars, some companies spend billions, but whoever was able, it was a race against time. Whoever was able to come up with a formula first had the monopoly in the market. So immediately India saw more than 300% increase on only this particular sector alone with respect to cyber attacks originating from enemy nations, countries like North Korea, China, Iran. So these are the countries which were actively trying to persuade our pharmaceutical company to extract some meaningful research out of it. So as I said, intrusions are part and parcel of the game. So your organization, even though you have a proper infrastructure in place, you are expecting certain attacks to happen on the infrastructure, right? So yes, we are understanding that there is nothing called as hack proof. Everyone can be hacked. But what does it determine for an organization, right? So it is called the speed at which an organization can recognize, analyze, prevent, and respond to an incident. So you might ask me, sir, what is an incident? So before we dig into incident, you have to understand two parts of it. There is something called as an event, something called as an incident, right? Not all events are incidents, but all incidents are events, some sort of a malicious event that has happened. For example, say a user tried to log in into the system. This cannot be termed as an incident initially. Why? Because yes, an authorized individual will try to log in into his machine or into his workstation, right? So that is an event. So user tried to log in is an event. But if at all a user who is sitting in Hyderabad or Telangana or India in specific, and suddenly there is an event which has been identified that a login attempt was made from a foreign country like Nigeria, for example. So that is a suspicious event that you are going to look into. And there are two parts to it. Whether you went to your client location or you are partying in Nigeria and suddenly you had to log in into your system, that is one part. Or there is some sort of an active threat actor trying to use your credential to log in into a machine. Right. So any unintended behavior or a malicious attempt in an organization is termed as an incident. Okay. So since organizations have this security control in place, have certain maturity roadmap in place, so the speed at which they can recognize, analyze, prevent, and respond to such incidents plays a critical role. So imagine having certain, like major timelines. For example, you have your Amazon Big Billion Days, or sorry, Amazon Great Indian Festival, Flipkart Big Billion Days, XYZ. So during, they actually make a ton of money across India only in those few days, apart from whatever sales they do year wide, right? So imagine if their infrastructure goes down during those critical period, there will be loss with respect to whatever money they are earning. There will be reputational damage. There will be conflict with respect to customer interest. You're not going to trust an organization again if your data got breached because of third party organization, right? So there is something called as crisis management. So yes, we are talking about cyber crisis. So there is something called as crisis management. So what does cyber crisis mean? Some sort of an unintended behavior which can damage the organization to certain extent. So what we are trying to do, yes, there might be a disaster that is waiting to occur. So we have to come up with a crisis management plan. So what's the purpose of it? It is to establish a strategic framework that can guide the organization to prepare, respond, and recover from a cyber crisis event or some sort of a cyber security event or an incident inside an organization. Okay. So what does cyber crisis management mean to an organization? If we have time, maybe sometime I'll give a better understanding of how crisis management is done. But in the crisis management plan, there is an integral component called incident response. That is what we are interested in today's lecture. So effective crisis preparation goes just beyond incident response to address the entire crisis management life cycle. But heart of crisis management is the incident response plan that you are building. Because the moment I say that you have to analyze, withstand, and respond to an attack, the incident response will come into picture. Okay. So we spoke about different types of attempts, some sort of an intrusion attempt that can happen inside the organization, your backups being lost or encrypted, some sort of a DDoS attack, malware attack, social engineering attack on your organization. And then what type of an impact it will have. If at all it's a criminal intent, so your data gets stolen, your intellectual property gets stolen. If at all it's an espionage attempt, so trade secret, intellectual property, etc. will be stolen. If at all it's a cyber warfare attempt, as I said, it might be denial of service. It can be what you call defacement of your websites, or trying to implant malware or advanced persistent threats will come into your organization and sit inside your organization's infrastructure and see what type of a cyber attack they can carry out later. So as I said, so incident response plan sits in the heart of crisis management plan. So here, what is cybersecurity we spoke about? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When you're talking about availability, there comes the concept of business continuity planning. right? Because yes, your systems got infected today, but tomorrow it has to withstand. It has to cater to your customers. You have to come back on track as quickly as possible. That is business continuity planning, right? So as part of incident response planning, what are you trying to do? Security related threats to the systems, networks, and data. You identify them, what type of threats these particular systems, your data, and your networks will have, and then create some sort of a plan to respond, remediate, and recover from an attack. Okay. And business continuity planning, it is a very bigger umbrella where different components will come into picture. Crisis management, crisis communication management, incident response planning, and others. All these combined will form business continuity planning, right? So what is an incident as per NIST? A violation or imminent threat of violation of computer security policies, acceptable use policies, or standard security practices. So anything that is beyond baseline. So any baseline deviation inside your organization is where you term it as an incident. So as I said, every day, for example, say Sai logs in into his computer from India. So that is his baseline. Deviation, someone else trying to log in into same account using the credentials of Sai from Nigeria, for example. So that is a baseline deviation, right? So there is some sort of a behavior anomaly that you have identified. So that is called as an incident. So whenever I'm talking about business continuity, so imagine that your business is going smoothly over a period of time, and suddenly there is a business interruption that happens because of a cybersecurity incident or a cyber attack on your organization. Okay. Then you perform all the intended operations in between and bring your system back on track. And again, your system is catering to the client base that you have in place. But whenever you're talking about an incident response plan, so imagine in the previous slides, we spoke about having, even though your systems or organization has a proper crisis management plan, the efficiency of an organization is determined by the speed at which you respond, recover, analyze, and come back on track. Yes. So when you're talking about this, so immediately there comes the aspect of your incident response. So there is something called as MTO, called maximum tolerable outage. For example, yes, you have been breached, you couldn't help it, but what is the maximum time that you can afford without incurring losses? So there is something called as acceptable interruption window, where, for example, say your credit card companies will send you a message saying from today 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. you'll not be able to make any transactions because of a routine upgrade, for example. So that is an acceptable interruption window that the company has decided. It's not because of an interruption, but it is some sort of what you call a security measure that they're following. So there is something called a service delivery objective, right? So how are you going to come up with an alternative board, a mode to cater to your clients? It might be some sort of a DR plan that you have implemented. For example, every server or a firewall that you are implementing has something called as HA and FO. What is HA? High availability. To ensure the systems are accessible for the max amount of time possible, and that is called HA, failover. For example, instead of going with one single server, you maintain two servers with a load balancer. Immediately, if one server is overwhelmed with requests or DDoS attacks, immediately second server will take the remaining load. Or if the first server got impacted with a cyber attack, immediately the alternate server will come back into the picture. This is called failover, right? So in a nutshell, this is how business continuity will look like. I try to just give a basic definition here, but based on the service delivery objectives, what type of an interruption window that your company can allow based on the point of failure and service resumption. What is this? This is called interruption window, right? We spoke about different plans that you're going to implement. Use some sort of an alternative methodology, ensure that the clients are being catered, but again, resume your services back online as with as little interruption as possible and as quickly as possible. That is what we are looking at here. So there are two teams inside organizations, which are incident management teams and incident response teams. So what is incident management teams? the higher level business continuity planning teams, your risk management teams, your steering committees, the policy drivers, the people who actually create policies, who actually create the performance metric and KRAs, KPIs for an organization. This is where the management teams comes into picture. But when you're looking at incident response team, these are the people who look at the technical and the core technical part of incident response. So you might ask me, like, what would be the core technical part? So if at all I'm talking about endpoints, what are endpoints? Your workstations, your laptops, your desktops, your connected systems at data center ops, XYZ. So, and also your mobile devices, which are provided by your organization. When different companies provide you, so in an organization, if at all I can show you. So if you look at a comprehensive infrastructure of an organization, so this might, look like a maze of different technology that are out there inside an infrastructure. Because all these devices, this is a simple example of different assets inside an organization. If you can see, there are many virtual components which are segmented through some sort of VLANs. You have different systems for different needs. If you look at here, you see the ERP system, you have HRMS. So you have HR teams inside an organization. They are going to bring in people, right? So, for example, they conduct interviews, they build database, so they have to maintain that info. And at the same time, you have your endpoint security. So you are giving laptops to your employees, assigning computers to your employees. So those systems have to be monitored. That is where endpoint management will come into picture. So at different level, so on network level, you are having firewalls from network. If at all it's an MPLS line, the outside internet, when it is coming into your organization, then immediately you need to have some sort of firewalls. You will be having proxy firewalls. You have to give different access privileges to employees. So you are going to have different Active Directory servers for ACG, access control groups, we call it. And then your network devices, your telephones, VoIP. So everything works on something called as protocol. They have certain port numbers, and each device here has to be protected in a different way. For network devices, you come up with a different control set. For your endpoints, you come up with a different control set. For data inside these systems, you come with a different control set. So all these combined, you actually have this incident response team, which has the technical capability to do the investigation, to run proper IR plan that the incident management team has decided. So you have something called as scope of work. You have something called as roles and responsibilities inside an organization. So whenever you say, uh, you know, you have X controls inside an organization and you have Y set of data inside an organization, right? So your primary purpose is to secure both the data and the infrastructure, right? So what are all the ways in which an attacker can come into your organization? Always remember the mantra, you cannot protect what you don't know inside your organization, right? So you perform a comprehensive threat model for your infrastructure. You do something called as landscape mapping. So where you are going to identify the entire infrastructure, right? And after you did your attack surface mapping, now you are going to properly prepare like what type of an incident will occur, right? So in terms of an incident that has already occurred, so I'm talking from an proactive approach, okay? So sorry, from a reactive approach. So an attack has already happened, right? So before that, you might have already anticipated that your web application might be at risk, for example. So you have already planned that your web application might get attacked. You already had a web application firewall in place, but still you got compromised. So now you have to determine what type of an attack it is, what really happened on the infrastructure, whether it was just a defacement or your file systems got compromised, your database got scammed, your infrastructure got eliminated, your data got encrypted. What is it that had happened? And immediately after you have done your identification, you have to do something called as containment, right? Because you have to ensure that virus will not spread inside an organization. It might not be a virus. It might be any untoward incident that is happening. It should be restricted to as little system as possible so that other systems are safe. So what are you trying to do? You are trying to limit the impact of this particular breach, right? And then you are now trying to escalate it to the relevant teams, whoever will be a part of investigation. For example, if at all it's a web application security breach, who is the developer team that is working on, who is maintaining the code repository, right? And if at all through web application, if some network got compromised, who is the guy who's taking care of the networks? It might be network operations team, it might be network security team, right? So I spoke about roles and responsibilities. So here, since we already have a playbook, what are we trying to do? We try to escalate it to relevant parties to ensure what are the next course of steps that they have to take. Then analysis and eradication. So as part of analysis and eradication, so you have already notified all the relevant teams. Sometimes it might be the end users also based on the nature of breach that has occurred. Then you now try to analyze and eradicate. Now we are trying to actively investigate this particular incident that has occurred. It is now moving into response phase, right? Identify and respond. So as part of respond, what you are trying to do, you analyze what type of an incident it is. How did he come into our system? What is that he was able to bypass? What is the remediation steps that I have to take? And then immediately you have to eradicate or restrict its propagation, right? If at all it's a malware, directly update the IOC list across the infrastructure, block it, delete that file, and immediately go into the recovery phase, right? So when you go into the recovery phase, what are you going to do? If at all it's a ransomware incident that has happened, okay, you have analyzed it. So as part of ransomware, you have understood, okay, this is some sort of WannaCry ransomware variant. It has to be restricted by blocking SMB port numbers and this level of protocol. So any system which is having SMB v1 enabled, you are going to turn it off by default. Then clean this system, wipe the system, use a local backup, recover the system, and bring it back on track. And at the same time, so you were already anticipating attack, you already had security control at each place, but still you got compromised. So after recovery, after ensuring business continuity, now your duty will be on the lines of lessons learned. What is it that you missed? Or what is it that the threat actor is starting unique that you didn't anticipate before? So this is where the lessons learned come into picture. So after you have identified it, after you got the relevant info, you go again and then prepare your infrastructure resilient to even such type of attacks that you didn't see before, right? And then as part of notification, so notification can be two parts. So one part would be after the breach, to what extent it has happened, who has to notify, if at all there are any privacy related concerns, you have to indicate the end users. And after that, after your response is complete, again you have to assure your clientele, right? Like what you have done, what has happened, and how you were able to come back online to gain their trust again. So why incident response is really important today? Because cybercrime has become a multimodal approach for different countries to gain quick money. So whenever you're talking about incident response, the efficiency of an organization is attributed to two key terms, right? Mean time to detect, mean time to contain, or mean time to respond, right? So MTTD, MTTR, MTTI, and MTTC. So what is mean time to identify? So how much time did you take to identify and confirm that there is a confirmed breach inside the organization? And how much time did you take to resolve it and restore to normalcy? So whenever you're talking about business continuity, you have to come back to normalcy quickly, right? So that's what we have been looking for. So in this preparation phase, what are you going to do? What shall we do if different types of incidents occur? So this is called business impact analysis. So what type of attack can disrupt what part of your infrastructure, what type of impact it will have to the organization, right? So when is the incident management team called? Like when are they going to be a part of this program? If at all an incident occurs. So when are government agencies or federal agencies will come into picture, right? If at all it is critical infrastructure. and you know that some systems got compromised. Or recently, if at all there is an examination department and someone compromised the exam infrastructure, so the task force, local task force will be involved. So who is going to let them know? So what is the, so depends on nature of business, the type of data that we are processing and the type of business we are running. So all this will determine when do we involve law enforcement, what equipment do we need to handle an incident, what shall we do to prevent or discourage incidents from occurring, where on-site and off-site shall we keep the IRP, incident response plan. So who is going to work on it, from where they are going to run this, what is the scope, how are the teams defined, how are the roles and responsibilities established, everything will come into that. So when it comes to the detection aspect of incident response, so since incident response is mostly reactive, incident preparation is proactive, right? Because you are anticipating attacks. So at different levels, I just showed you a complex diagram, right? So at network level, you will have some sort of network intrusion detection or prevention systems. At endpoint level, you will have some sort of host-based intrusion detection system, and to monitor, manage these endpoints, you might have some sort of an EDR, XDR, whatever you might call it. It's like an antivirus technology for the endpoints. And you have ton of different devices which generate, like, GBs and TBs of information on a daily basis. So you have to be able to make sense out of that much amount of information that is being generated on a daily basis. How are you going to do this? You are going to use a tool called Security Information and Event Management. You might have already seen it in the SOC session already. So this is a critical tool of any security ops team. Okay. So what does it do? So different types of devices generate different types of data. All this log information is collected into one system, which will give you proper visualization. It will help you understand what is happening inside your infrastructure, what type of an incident, what severity of an incident, what asset has been impacted, what type of an alert it is, what is the log source type, what is the incident, any information that is really required, you can get in one single dashboard using any SIM technology. So I'm not going to say you are going to use only one specific tool for SIM. You can use any type of SIM. There are open source SIM also outside that you can leverage. And each SIM has a unique interface, but the primary purpose is to ensure, instead of having a siloed approach, you monitoring 100 different devices individually, you're going to have one central system which can ingest any type of log into it and give you meaningful result out of the data that has been collected. All the raw information extracted from different devices are correlated, collected, aggregated, and given into a meaningful format, which can make sense to the end user. So what type of logs that in incident response we are collecting and monitoring? So mostly your security configuration on different devices, your file integrity monitoring, or your login attempts, what type of events you are actually trying to do. And then is there any log issue that is actually happening? Network irregularity based on the baselines that you are setting up, authentication failures if they are happening, every event that is being, that can be logged inside an infrastructure. For example, Windows event log is there and Windows error logs are there. Simply ingest that information and it will give you a ton of information of what's happening on a server or an endpoint. And software applications. So any application that you are using, are the web applications susceptible to certain attacks? If at all you are using a WAF or a honeypot, you know what information is being relayed to the end server, what type of threat actor activity that you are seeing on your systems, what is general intended behavior, XYZ, right? So incidents may include, so an IT system might look at different aspects, and from a user's perspective, you can see a different aspect. So on an IT level, what you will see, some sort of failure of the applications, configurational issues. It might be intentional, unintentional changes that happen, some sort of volumetric attacks that you can see, where you see unusually high traffic inside your infrastructure, and file transfers, data exfiltration attempts that might be happening, unexplained system crashes where your hardware is choked, unexplained connection terminations. So these are different aspects which you can term as incident inside an infrastructure from an IT perspective. From an employee perspective, a malware can be detected, Someone might have violated the policy of an organization. For example, I say you shouldn't connect your USB devices on your office computer. You have connected it. I say you shouldn't publish your source code Git repository outside. You have published somewhere, for example. You have already breached the policy of your organization. Data breach can occur from different types, right? So someone stole your laptop. Someone exfiltrated data from your system. You by mistakenly sent some data instead of one user to another user. That is also considered data breach because you have sent some critical information for business to an unintended recipient. Social engineering or fraud. So some people can pose as your company, some people can try using gift card scams, some people can use business email compromise as a delivery vector XYZ. And unusual events that the user might see inappropriate logins, unusual system reports, and your systems become slow, some files get deleted, websites can be defaced, which you detect whenever you're going to your website, your company's website, etc. So I'll move into the NIST part of it. We'll take an example of ransomware and see how it goes. So, as I said, for any contingency planning, so you will do something called as business impact analysis. As part of business impact analysis, you do the preparation required for incident response, right? So disaster recovery. So as part of your business impact analysis, you have a plan ready, a response plan. This plan will ensure you have some sort of a disaster recovery in place, which will have some sort of temporary breathing time for the organization by the time this team will conduct the investigation. So if you look at here, incident response policy. So your organization has two parts to it. So one would be the policy aspect, one would be the plan aspect. So as I said, policy will be mostly like a textbook definition, the SOP that is being built on which incident to look at, how to look at, what priority to be looking at, how are you going to cater to this XYZ. When it comes to the response plan, it is the complete technical and how the teams work in silos and at the same time in unison, right? If at all a separate team is working on the forensic aspect, okay, let them do. But if at all teams have to sit, they have to be on a bridge call. Who is going to moderate? Who is going to take care? Who is going to head this investigation? XYZ. Everything is established inside an incident response plan. You might heard about something called as playbooks. What is a playbook? So playbook is something like for every situation you create some sort of a plan already, and you are going to simulate it. You're going to say, okay, you have identified ransomware, you have identified system has been encrypted, your database has been encrypted. So what is the course of action? Who is going to take what responsibility? Who are going to use what type of technology? Where are we going to invest? Where are we going to get the expertise from? All this is already jotted down. Okay, that is what is a playbook. So your company's efficiency to cater and at the same time the team's capability to take up these unexpected challenges will also be defined on the maturity of the playbooks an organization will have. Okay, so NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, actually has an incident response lifecycle built. So it is a government body in US which works extensively with different stakeholders, especially defense governments, etc, and it has come up with something called as an incident response cycle, right? So where they have categorized it into four key phases. So I have given you already one table right there. So this is something like a siloed or broken down version of whatever I have shown you. Preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, post-incident activity. So as I said, in the initial phase, it is always anticipatory. You're always expecting that some sort of a cyber attack will happen, right? So you're going to prepare. You understand the business impact. You do your BIA. You try to bring out a plan to see how are you going to cater to any incident that happens. Then comes your capability to detect and analyze. So you should first protect your systems once you have detected. So how are you going to detect it? What type of technology are you using? What type of an expertise an individual has to have? Yes, now you have detected that a breach has happened. So how are you going to analyze, right? So accurately detecting and assessing incidents is often the most difficult part of incident response for many organizations. Why? Because you can't treat a disease if you don't know what disease it is, how it is impacting. You don't know the medicine to that yet. Once you have diagnosed it properly, only then you can give a medicine, right? So that is what happens here also. So you are first trying to identify what is this particular incident that you're seeing. If it's a ransomware, so how is this ransomware leveraging the vulnerability inside your system? What vulnerability is being exploited? If you don't know that, you are unable to do some sort of a containment mechanism. So you know WannaCry propagates over SMB v1, server message block version 1. Why is it utilized? So server message block is generally utilized for accessing printers and fax machines inside an infrastructure. Okay. Network connected output devices. So immediately once you have identified, you have detected that it is a ransomware, the next questions come, what type of ransomware? Immediately you understand, okay, this is WannaCry. Once you have understood, okay, it is WannaCry, what is the next step? You have to understand what are the indicators of compromise for WannaCry and indicators of attacks of WannaCry, indicators of pivot for WannaCry. Once you have done this, now we are going to contain. So you know, okay, SMB v1 is actively exploited. I'm going to shut down SMB v1 first. I'm going to isolate this since it is propagating over network. I just switch the VLAN or just turn down the network temporarily, right? Then the containment aspect is taken care. Now the eradication part. So what type of an encryption algorithm? Is there a key out there? Do I have a proper backup? Is the backup verified? You need to have something called a secure backup. Your backups will not serve any purpose if you don't know if an attacker already has his malware planted in the backup as well. The moment you retrieve that, the moment you reimage your system, again the attack will happen because your backup is not security vetted, right? And then comes the recovery phase. How are you going to recover? What are the different aspects of it? For example, you have a decryption key, you are going to decrypt it. You would sanitize your system, eradicate any traces of malware on the machine, and bring it back on track. If at all there is no decryption key, for example, what are you going to do? You are going to just blindly trust your backup. So you verify the authenticity of your backup. You verify the hash code. If at all any security tool you are using, you verify when was the last known backup. Last known good backup, we call it, right? Why good backup? Because that is what we are sure that the information is secure to max extent possible. Then comes post incident or post event activity. So what are you going to do here? You have your lessons learned. It might be configurational issues. It might be a new vulnerability. Your playbooks were inadequate, right? You might have not anticipated that risk. You didn't threat model properly. There was some risk, a residual risk, which was not treated properly, or they leverage some sort of legacy component inside our infrastructure. All this is considered, and then it will go into the preparation phase again. So it is a continuous cycle. So you cannot say I have created 4-page document and I'm going to use it to ensure that my system is secure to max extent possible. So what benefits does it pose to an organization? First is always improved security, right? So I spoke about MTTD, MTTI, MTTR, MTTC. So mean time to detect, respond, and come back on track. So improved response time, improved incident containment. So you try to ensure that the attack will not propagate as quickly as the threat actor believes it can happen. Improved incident visibility. You know what type of an incident, where to look at, how to look at, what type of expertise is required, XYZ. Reduced impact cost. So what are you looking at here? So if at all there is some sort of a downtime, your services got disrupted. So you can reduce that issues here, right? So operational downtime is reduced, incident impact is reduced, and your regulatory fines. For example, I believe India's DPDPA, Digital Personal Data Protection Act, has fines up to 250 crores, one of the costliest fines across the globe. So if at all there was some sort of privacy breach or a privacy violation just because you didn't have proper controls in place, then the company is doomed, right? Business enablement. So the more trust you gain, the more secure you are. You will better have contractual requirements because you're already abiding with the security controls established by different compliance standards that are out there, industry requirement. So for people to trust you, you need to have certain controls in place. Law, so law of the land or some sort of domains. For example, in India, if someone wants to deal with personal data of citizens, they have to abide by the DPDPA law, right? And certain, if at all you are a critical infrastructure company, you have to abide by whatever certain has defined, Computer Emergency Response Team India. So you have to abide by all the rules that certain has defined. Certain mandates, for example, say 3 months of backups has to be there at any point in time. Or for the last 3 years, I need to have backups of all logs or the log information of all systems, right? So all this has to be ensured, factored in whenever you are creating your incident response framework. So if you look at the skeletal structure in the preparation, as I said, we said who is going to take care, how are you going to communicate, how are you going to work in silos or in unison, right? So communication and facilities, hardware and software required might be analysis software, detection software, proactive softwares, reactive softwares, resources, the expertise that you will have in your company and the teams that you will actually build. Detection and analysis. So attack vectors, from where it actually happened, how it happened, sign of an incident, how are you determining that it is an incident? Source of precursors, from where they were able to launch an attack, how did they come into the infrastructure? Incident analysis, analyze what type of an incident it is, come up with the incident documentation. And if at all 2 or 3 attacks are happening, multi-stage attacks are happening, you have to prioritize which incident has to be first stopped and taken care of the other incidents later. Identify and notify the incident. So you have to notify the relevant stakeholders, the relevant teams, XYZ. So containment eradication. So what is the containment strategy? How are you going to stop the propagation? How are you going to gather the evidence? How are you going to handle the evidence from forensic perspective? And where is the patient zero? Like from which computer did the attack originate, or which is the what do you call endpoint which has first compromised, and from where did the attack first start? Eradication and recovery. So what are you going to do to treat this particular attack or some sort of malware or a vulnerability that is out there? And how are you going to recover from this attack as quickly as possible? Post incident, as I said, lessons learned. Using collected incident data, you do a better preparation for the next stage of attacks, or for the next few years, you are going to revamp the entire infrastructure that you have. Evidence retention. So if tomorrow someone asks, so for legal aspects, actually, as the law states of the country, you have to ensure that you save the evidence to certain extent. Whenever it is required, you have to submit it. So in the recent times, you already know ransomware has gone to new heights. So in terms of a ransomware attack, how are you going to use this particular four-staged or five-staged approach that we are talking? Sometimes eradication and recovery will be termed as a different piece, for example. So first, if at all it's a ransomware attack, uh, in most cases, the threat actors will not come out and say that, okay, I have breached your system, right? Because they want to stay in your infrastructure to max extent possible. They don't want to get detected so that they can inflict maximum damage. But when it comes to ransomware, they come out and say that I have compromised your system. They will leave a ransom note. They want to get some sort of they want to create some sort of panic so that they can extort some money, right? And if at all it's a ransomware, it is very time sensitive in the first place. So you understand that this can inflict maximum damage inside an organization just because it is encrypting every other device, and it will make the data useless, right? So in the detection phase, you have identified, yeah, this is a ransomware. What variant of ransomware? How is it, like propagating itself? So to minimize the risk, you try to isolate the infected system. So it can be through network segmentation, device segmentation, or using some sort of, shutdown approach for certain protocols. So if a single host within an organization is found to infected, there is a high likelihood that additional hosts are also infected. So one system was able to show you the message that they have been compromised, but The other additional host may also be sleeping, viruses inside the system, which will go havoc whenever the time is right. So you have to ensure that the other systems have to be verified for this particular IOC, IOA, and IOP. So if you identify an infected host that is responsible for encrypting files, especially on a network share, monitor the shares very closely after you take the infested infected host offline. So as soon as you take the system offline, you have to see what type of privilege this system had with other systems. How are they going to share this info? Or if there was any file share that happened from this machine to the other machines that are out there. On the analysis part, we do something called as a root cause analysis. So whenever we are talking about detection and analysis, we also do something called as root cause analysis. So RCA, we call it. So as part of root cause analysis, we try to dig and identify from where did this attack first start? What was the initial delivery vector? From where did the attack start? Was it a malware, or was it credential compromise, or was it a vulnerability that was leveraged and a 0 day has been taken control of your system? You don't know. So identifying the specific variant of ransomware in action in terms of a ransomware related incident, and then determining how the malware entered the organization. So mostly the attack vector for organizations is through business email compromise, through email. Sometimes browser exploitation can be leveraged, or vulnerability specific to the web application or specific to that particular infrastructure can be leveraged, right? So now we are going to see what type of variant of malware, what vulnerability it is exploiting, from where it might have started, which system might have started this, which user might have, downloaded this suspicious or unsuspicious file into the organization, right? If at all there was any policy violation, security violation, XYZ. So whether it's a email entry point, so who received this email, how many people received this email, what type of an attachment was there. So if at all it contained any malware, how many people clicked on the email, how many people downloaded the file, how many people interacted with the file, everything is attributed. Then drive-by download entry. So sometimes you might be using some sort of pirated site in your organization to download a file, convert PDF, XYZ, and drive-by download. So one unsuspecting individual downloaded one file from a, what you call fake website, for example. Immediately, it might have caused some problems. So there might be some issues with respect to your endpoint systems because they were unable to detect it in the first place. Then exploitation and manual infection. So how did it leverage? How did the key exchange happen? From where did the keys get downloaded? When did the encryption occur? XYZ. Now we are going into the containment phase. So as I said, if at all it's a variant of WannaCry, you are going to understand, okay, it leverages certain vulnerability. What are those components? How do you isolate? How do you ensure that the propagation doesn't happen? XYZ. And the authorization or the authentication privileges will be taken down in the containment phase. In the eradication phase, since you have done your root cause analysis properly, you understand different delivery vectors from where it came, what type of malware got installed, um, to what systems this particular malware got propagated, if at all there was any lateral movement, if there was any defense evasion tactic that was utilized. All these are considered and respective patches are applied. For example, if some sort of rogue account was created with admin privileges, you take down that account first. If some user's credentials were compromised, you reset his password. Some sort of outdated component or outdated system version is being utilized, you upgrade that particular system with that software to the newer version, right? And you ensure if at all there was some sort of malicious file which was installed, you identify the hash across the infrastructure, delete it by default across all endpoints. Okay. So this is called the group update policies. Also, you can push the same changes to multiple systems at once through Active Directory. And infected systems will be cleaned, wiped, recovered, restored with reimaging. Passwords of all affected users will be reset and recovery. So we spoke about having proper database controls in picture. How are you going to patch them, right? How are you going to verify the authenticity of the backups? Is the backup secured properly? Was your organization using an encrypted backup so that you are, free from any data exfiltration attempts that have already happened? Or if at all data has already exfiltrated, whom are you going to communicate with? How are you going to let the end users know? And what are you going to do about it? And what is the backup strategy you have in place so that you quickly bring the systems back on track? Post-incident activity. So as I said, lessons learned. So you bring in all the relevant people, all the teams which have worked, including end users. If they committed a mistake and because of them, their infrastructure got compromised, you take the lessons learned, you build your playbooks better, you come up with a better incident management plan, incident response plan, bring in new technology, upskill your individuals or employees to cater to such risks in future. So analyzing effectiveness of your technology can clarify any needed architectural modifications, divestments, or new investments in security technologies can keep the security maturity model evolving. So you didn't anticipate certain risks. So now you bring in a new tool, new technology to create an additional barrier from someone coming easily into your infrastructure. So each organization is different and the recommendations presented are general in their nature. So whatever I am talking about, it is in a nutshell, this is the skeletal structure for any investigation that you are doing inside an organization. But for each type of variant, the type of organization, the controls that are in place, the policies that are in place. So you are going to perform the same skeletal structure, but the activity might differ depending on the nature of compromise, the type of malware, and the infrastructure, the policies that are in place, the data, XYZ, and also sometimes jurisdictional laws. So in all cases of potential incident where your organization requires assistance, please contact your incident response team or your service provider, whoever is your organization's security teams, IT teams. Instead of you going and digging into it, just have the relevant people handle this situation better. So do you have to pay a ransom? So he's a criminal at the end of the day. So you don't know whether he will stand by his word. So even though you pay ransom, you don't know whether you're going to get your money back, right? So that's the first step. Next, paying a ransom does not equal instant recovery because he can try to extort money again and again. He might give you the key or not, or he might already have your data in hand. So he will blackmail you in future, or he might just say instead of giving you, if at all it is a multi-stage attack or multi-key variant type of a ransomware attack, he will give you 2 or 3 keys and say, okay, for your money you paid, I'm going to give you 2 keys. You can decrypt 500 GB of your data. For the remaining 500 GB, pay me again so many bitcoins and I'm going to give you the keys. So you can't trust them. And it is one way. So in US, by law, it is a criminal offense if you pay ransom without notifying authorities. Because if at all you are paying them, you are actually propagating that modus operandi. They increase their capacity, they increase their sophistication, they increase their capability using this money, and they target more systems. So that's the reason it is considered a federal offense. As I mentioned, paying cyber criminals strengthens their business model. As I mentioned, they can recruit new people, create custom exploit, come up with new technology. So, in a nutshell, I believe I have covered much of the incident response that I wanted to share. If you have any doubts, you can raise your hands. I'll take your questions, or you can post it in the Q&A section here. You can post it in the chat or Q&A section if you would like to answer. Hope whatever subject I covered made sense to you guys. You can raise your hands also if you would like to. I can unmute you and you can ask your question. Either you understood everything or you understood nothing. I'm not sure, but hopefully you had a good experience. So I tried to cover this. So try to dig something on your own. Try to learn about this subject. It is a very fascinating and interesting subject. There are many careers in this, especially as I showed you, like every organization has certain blueprint for security, right? So most of the jobs will lie in security operations and incident response. So try to see if at all you can gain some expertise in these areas. Try to do some homework, dig into this subject, and it will help a lot for your career. I believe we have sent emails for all the candidates regarding blockwares and I believe cyber people. So they are giving a discounted coupon. So I believe in the next class we will be launching the offer. For some amount, they are going to give you 3 months of extensive training, giving you a certificate, and also giving you internship. And they are also opening up for job opportunities. So if you are interested, you can go through the email that we have sent for cyber people and blockwares. You can go check in the subject line cyber people in job, blockers and see if at all it interests you. If you have interest, you can reach out to them and they'll help you with what type of expertise is being trained. So Kamya has asked a question. So off topic, but a common question between certificates like CEH, OSCP, CompTIA, and CISSP, which ones matter the most in hiring today? So if at all you are entry level, so you shouldn't worry about CISSP. So before you go into any certification, first understand what those certificates are. So if at all it's a CISSP, you should have more than 5 years or 7 years of experience, and then you do CISSP. It will add value. If at all you are an entry level, you have to see what domain you are exploring. So cyber has close to 0% unemployment, but you have to have relevant expertise, hands-on skill here. So when you need hands-on skill, try to work on Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, and we conduct hackathons. You be part of our CTFs. As part of hackathons, we also do trainings. So we teach you web application hacking, and then you can go and explore. So all these are credentials. So whenever you're talking about entry level, there is nothing like entry level. Maybe you, if at all you're good at penetration testing, go with Learn Security Junior Penetration Testing. And if at all you're looking to explore SOC as a critical domain, I always suggest you go with CompTIA Security Plus. If you go to that subject, you will have at least initial understanding of how the enterprise architecture will look like. So that's one part. Can we join Government of India sectors in cybersecurity as a graduate? Yes, you can, but you have to show and prove your mettle, right? So there are different hackathons that happen through different government departments, including us. We conduct some yearly programs to identify talent. So be a part of them, be a part of the community, and there will be some sort of a stepping stone or an entry into such departments, especially government departments. So which ones matter the most? So in today's time, even CEH is not serving that much of a value, but you can go with CEH practical. OSCP is definitely good. If at all you're looking for SOC, EC Council has a certified SOC analyst. CompTIA has Security Plus. So certified defender from Blue Team Labs also, I believe. They all give you a better understanding. If you're looking to explore SOC, also go to Let's Defend and Blue Team Labs. It has a lot of wealth of material for you to understand the security operations and the incident response part of it. And can you explain about zero-day exploitation and vulnerability? So the name zero day itself signifies the amount of time you have to react. That's the reason it's called a zero day. So technically, you have no time to respond. It might be a novel attack or a vulnerability which has been identified and is being actively exploited. So you will not have much information about this vulnerability, the threat that is lurking around. So that's the reason it's called zero day. So you technically have no time, you don't have proper understanding about it, you don't have enough information of what is happening. So the incident response part, when you talk about analysis, it becomes a challenge. Containment becomes a challenge because you don't have enough knowledge about it, right? So you don't have enough time to respond. To answer your questions, I had said. So thank you guys. I believe you guys have stayed for 15 more minutes today also. I'm sorry for that, but hopefully you had a good learning experience today. If you have any questions, please drop on Q&A. We can answer it later also, or you can write to us anytime. My team has already been sending out a bunch of emails every day. So Next week, we will be coming up with a couple of upskilling programs. We'll see whatever benefit we can add to the individuals here so that it will help you with respect to certifications also. Okay. Thanks a lot. Hope you had a good learning experience today. Have a great day. We'll catch up next week again.